Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Can I just apologise before we start, before we turn things on, that if I'm on my phone, it's because there's urgent regional deal things that I'm trying to organise. So I'm just apologising in advance. I'm going to try and multitask if everyone's happy with that. But Carrie is going to be talking to this item anyway, so sorry, just wanted to.
Okay.
Ready?
Cool. Thanks very much. Welcome back, everyone. Media, members of the public, and let's look forward to the update. Thank you.
Right, I'll crack into it. You'll have seen from the slide deck that as it progresses, it's more about getting input, feedback, dialogue with councils. The first I'll go through relatively quickly, providing some context and what we've done to date. The refresher on this slide is around that this goes back to 2018. And council directed further consideration of affordable housing and worker accommodation for the site. So the current project is around what's the most appropriate long-term use and how can we achieve the outcomes sought. Today, what we would ideally like to come out of is direction on a short list of options for further development and investigation. So as I alluded, I'll go through fairly quickly some of the process and what we considered to where we got. And the more substantive part of this should be the assessment of the long list and a little bit on next steps after that. This is from the April workshop, so nothing new here except highlighting that speech bubble around that. Because of the length of the long list, we haven't engaged with stakeholders with a view to it being that long that we wouldn't have had a meaningful discussion. And so that will occur in that next block of time after this meeting, where hopefully we have a bit more confinement to what we're seeking that input on. Again, this shouldn't be new. This is the outcomes that council discussed and agreed to in April. The internal group that assessed these against the options consisted of policy, property, strategic growth, strategic projects. So we did this collectively. And what we did is test whether each option had low, mixed or high alignment with the outcomes. We deliberately didn't take a empirical business case assessment at this point. That may happen later. The objective for today is to test that where we're going forward with does match with the outcome sought. At a global level, you can probably glean from this that there's 4 different categories of options on the long list. There's the holds, develop, sell and lease, and that bottom one can't be categorized because it consists of a hybrid of different options. And just a minor note terminology wise, when we're talking about affordable housing here, this includes worker accommodation as per that original wording of council, and noting that given the time that's elapsed since that 2018 resolution, there has been a bit of a shift in what we're talking about here from seasonal workers to key workers. Just letting you know that we haven't included all the fine print in that, but that's what we were thinking of when we looked at this. So this is the high-level triage of where we got to, with the green highlighting being the options that we thought should go forward to a more detailed investigation because they had high alignment. The numbered ones are where we'd like to focus the discussion today because they had a mixed alignment, and the ones that are struck through had low alignment. Also fronting up that those green highlighted ones have affordable housing as a focus, and that can be contrasted to the ones for discussion today that are a little bit more commercial. That's not deliberate, that's happened as an outcome of the assessment against the outcome. So just front footing that's just what's happened as part of the assessment exercise. Right, so before nutting into the actual assessment with you, the main consideration here have to do with the alignment of the outcomes And the secondary point is around the resourcing. It goes without saying that the longer the list that we're taking through to this next stage, the more that will take to investigate. And so theoretically, the objective is to take forward the options today and have a fairly tidy list, but we understand that that might not actually be the outcome. Yeah, so I can go next into those mixed alignment ones. As you can see, the way we've engineered it is that we'd like to focus the discussion there. We will come to the high alignment, low alignment ones. We'll move on to those ones that are sort of the maybes for debate, because we felt that's where we needed to focus the discussion. So not ignoring those other ones, but yeah. The first of that maybe options that we'd like to talk to you about is a developed one as a community space. We considered this to be a hybrid alongside something else. Otherwise, it has very low it has a low alignment with outcomes. I don't think I need to go through the bullet points on there, but happy to turn it over to you for discussion on whether this is one that, yes, you'd like to see a more detailed investigation on, or whether no, because of how it's stacking up against the outcomes, it's not something to push through. I mean, the alternative is I can go through all 4 of those mixed ones and we can come back, but press pause here to get feedback on how you'd like to proceed.
So community space is.
Well, that was exactly what we would have to do,
I think
detailed investigation.
developing our own long list just for this one.
Yeah.
Work it
I
out.
mean, by that, do we mean parks or a library or something other than housing, or a mix of?
I think that's probably the point, when there's something other than housing.
Yeah. Hybrid.
So it's a hybrid option. So develop as a community space alongside,
Something else.
but so not just a community space.
Are we overcomplicating it? I mean, it feels a bit more like a sell or no sell decision to me, rather than.
Well, maybe have a look back at that. I'm just wondering, actually, because I nearly paused you up after you had the full list on screen, and I wonder if that was a point of reflection for people, just to sort of process the full list that is in front of them, give a bit of feedback on that, and then walk through the 4 that you want to focus
Should we go back to that initial one?
Yeah, I think maybe that's a better jumping off point for people to
What we're doing,
start reflecting on it.
where did this concept come from? For that, yes.
Because it was. Yeah,
Just because it's possible.
yeah, it's possible for a community need.
So there's no community group that said, hey, we want that, okay?
To be clear, this is exhaustive.
Yeah.
And our community services team, I'm sure would be happy, well, not I'm sure, would be happy to have some land in this area that is earmarked for intensification and therefore increase numbers of people to be able to develop a community space.
Sure.
Matt,
I was just wondering whether we can just talk about the do nothing option, which we did discuss last time at the workshop.
So
It's
Probably the second one.
second one, not the land bank, the definitely option.
which that is the status quo,
The whole one that hasn't been crossed out.
yes, because that's the current decision that was made by council, isn't it? Yeah. Just this list, just to be clear, you can see it's split into hold, develop, sell, or lease. And then there's variations within that. So Quentin, to your point, it's not quite as simple as just sell or don't sell. So we've tried to incorporate the fact that there's a spectrum within each of those. And this isn't trying to determine where in that spectrum you're falling, just what are the options on the spectrum to take to the next level. So we don't need to hear cover whether we think particular things are, you know, what we want to do with the site or not. What we just want to know is there's a spectrum of things we need to go and do a robust assessment on to bring back for your consideration.
I'd really like to know what the community wants to do with its land. And I don't know how far we have to shrink the options list to do that, but, you know, you've sort of shrunk it down a little bit. How do we decide at what point we should be going out to the community to find out what they value about the site and what they would.
On the timeframes, that part of the next.
So just to be clear, it's a freehold council land. Yeah.
So before we shrink it too much, can we go out, not for an SCP, but I'm talking about just so that we can get a sense of what the community's thinking about this piece of land. I think it's going to be really contentious. There are obviously people that live on the site. We've had an email about heritage values, you know, and then there are people who would say, just sell it, put on the same time. So it would just help, I think, there's so many different options here, just to give us a steer and so that we know what the.
So you're thinking sort of pre-process?
Yes, and just a pre-piece going, these are the things that we're looking at, these are the particular pros and cons, we're keen to hear.
Yeah, I get what you're coming from. I don't think it's bad suggestion at all. I guess the question we've got is A thing is timelines, but I think the timelines,
If one of the options is how with it, then
I guess the other question is like we are finding that the community is really fatigued with conservation moment. So you will hear that. Let me just finish.
Yeah.
You will hear the strong ends of the spectrum,
Yeah.
which you will hear anyway, and you are here for. I guess my question is would you want to try and do something, take something clarity now, but something more deliberative in this space? You know, this is another one of those areas where you could say, actually, we really want some people to understand.
The other value.
Sorry, can we just check in on what the process is? Is that the next step after you identify this list, which can be short as long as you like it, you can leave all of these mixed use things on there if you want to,
Yeah.
is engaging with the community. So that is part of the assessment process.
It's quite a long.
Well,
Yeah,
I'd go through them and eliminate some of them to get it down to a short list and a long list. But that's the first thing I'd do. But I mean, in all my time here, I've never heard any other value for the site other than a nostalgic value of people who once lived in a hut. I've never heard anybody express anything else about Lynch Block other than that nostalgic value. I could be wrong, but I just haven't. It's not in a place that people walk past on a daily basis. It's not in a. I mean, you know, I just can't.
I don't think it's nostalgia for how they lived. It's the fact that it provided a way of living.
Oh,
And I think that's
disagree.
the distinction. You know, a little bit like the Franks and Arnold.
And it was the rough guides and the whatever who and the paraglider pilots and all those sort of people who lived in those.
So it met a demand and that was there. And we've got other demands. So yeah, but I don't think it was. I really like living in this really cold, freezing, asbestos-like building because that's the reality.
They weren't great buildings.
And they are a record of the time.
There were two, there were two attractants, still are possibly, but affordability and the social context that was a vaguely report.
Okay, Melissa.
What I don't understand is, and I know that it's not green, it's just number one of the next options, but the develop a site as a community space. Has anyone approached us as to what that might be? Do we have any money for that to develop something?
Is it in the right place?
I would argue that it's not in the right place. So I'm not that keen on keeping that as an option because I don't think it is an option. I think that we've got better places for community spaces. I think that.
Thanks, John. Finish now.
I think I was.
So I'm missing my kids cross country for this. We've had a workshop where we've covered talk to the community, do this, and they've come back to us with a long list. If we don't like it, if we don't think it's useful to develop as a community space, can we, representatives of the community, in the next 40 minutes, veto it if we don't like it? Let's make some decisions. Let's come up with a short list of 4 or 5 to send the team away.
we can walk, do you want to work through each one?
And let's represent our community so we don't have to talk to them on every single point there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great.
Okay, well, I'm not for that develop into a community space either.
I mean, like I said, if we go through it, I reckon if we went through them one by one, say yes or no, we'd actually end up with 3 probably in about 5 minutes, I reckon.
Before we go through that, I had one observation on the report. Obviously, a lot of people go, "Oh, sell it the highest bidder, offset debt," but the way that we fund things, we're not able to offset debt because the debt on, say, water infrastructure obviously needs to pay for itself, and the sort of nuance of ring fencing. Can you sort of anyone talk to when we sell assets like this, how we reallocate it in a ring fence manner? Because we could reallocate it for other strategic land investments, which I don't see as an option of thing necessarily. I see it like giving to the trust of maximum value for community housing, but I go, well, it might be for community recreation in a different place.
That's number 3. That's number 3.
Is it? Have I overlooked that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we do that,
Is that ring fence investment? Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm in a, interpret that wrong.
Yeah, and I think as we go through this, people will think, what is the site worth? I guess there is, what could we sell it for? But what is the opportunity cost of not using that land? Because I think the two are quite different, as we'll probably explore if we need to.
and then we discussed last time, the risk of selling now when maybe it's worth a bit more down the track once the surrounding land's developed. Like,
That's why this.
yeah, that was the concern.
Just my brief question on that. So, I think it was correctly pointed out to me that this land is part of PC 50, right? Plantage 50. 50 was excluded from the urban intensification previously because it didn't meet the criteria or something. It's now included, but that's yet to go through a process, or it is fully included. Those provisions are.
My understanding is that the recent decision means that it can be included as part of the urban intensification, but that's not.
It has to go through a process still, because it hasn't been subject to the plan stop or something that we've had that we've had a release. It's now been released by the minister to be processed under the special zones.
That's correct, yes, so it's not coming from this, I will need to
Okay.
go through that plan change process.
Right. So just to point that out, and it was pointed out to me by a local planner, and it appears to be correct that we're about to go through a process of lifting its value. Right through the plan change process, increasing the height limits, increasing the density, increasing the stuff like that. So the first thing would be not to sell it until that has occurred, because that would actually be undermining a value uplift opportunity that is currently in play. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, so that's one of the options that we have selected to proceed through to the next step. And the points you make are really well made around looking at PC50.
Yeah.
And it's these in-between ones where you guys are correctly identifying why the outcomes are mixed that we need your input. So we will 100% be looking into that in more detail. It's a really
That will
salient
dictate
point.
our timing.
I think your green one's good. It's a case of whether you add any one of the other ones in, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're going to go through them
Yeah.
one at a time.
Okay,
So I think we've exhausted this one. We can come back to it if you want. So the second one,
Sorry, hold on, the first one though. We just confirmed this was developed as a community space, but there was clear direction that we did not want to pursue that. Is that what the direction was?
Well, just that there's no identified community purpose for which to develop it.
there's a
So,
community group that has approached the council, community services who we've talked to about this on a very high level said, look, it's something we can talk about, but they haven't done any in-depth work. So that's why we're.
Other than the housing trust.
sorry, and the next phase would include potential community purposes, because otherwise we couldn't assess it
I think
against the others.
personally, I think if we're going out to the community and having these are our potential options for the shortlist, you would include that one. You wouldn't wipe that one
I
out.
think
at
we
this
haven't
stage.
got any money for it. If
Yeah.
it's not
We don't
if we don't have an identified need for it.
Yeah.
Somebody else can fund it. We're talking about those sorts of.
Hang on.
Groups right now that might be looking.
Yeah.
So now, if we heard this again,
Yeah.
planning process, community groups are looking for land.
Because we haven't heard of it.
Yeah, but I
That's
also think that
You can see that.
the value of that land, I think it's up to us to go, do we think it's worth what should we put community places on a piece of land that's not quite valuable? I think but but then you're going to give them the option, and I think you'd be doing a disservice to the rest of the community to give them such a valuable piece of land.
But at the same time, if we wanted to put any community space anywhere down in Queenstown, it's going to be prohibitive. So this is potentially the only option that we have, the only bit of land that we have to potentially do that. And that means it's potentially a no community space.
So show of hands, who wants it? Who's in for development?
It's not, it's just to go out, it's just to let the community have the option to have a say. Just to let them have an option to have a say.
I can't think of a single community activity that I would put up there in the wrong place. Honestly, I say that genuinely. I wouldn't put a squash court there. I wouldn't put Happiness House there. I wouldn't put a performing arts centre there. I wouldn't put. I cannot. It's nice to
totally agree with you, but what I'm saying is, if we are going out to the commission to ask them, give them the chance to have a say on it.
Can we say on something that won't happen is
How do you know your mind won't be changed?
Can we maybe reframe this? So maybe the way to deal with this is if we had a real quick ready from the Parks or Property team on what are the public freehold lands or reserves available within this area that could be used.
I think only do that, like we can do that if you agree you want that, then that's taking it through to this next piece of work. So
But that is
that's
a
just saying.
that is a significant piece of work in its own right.
Okay,
That will,
but we don't know what the constraints are. We're thinking about that in isolation. Well, no, I mean, you wouldn't make a decision about that in isolation.
We have done work on surplus land previously.
There's
And
work out.
we've done multiple times in my time here where we've looked at what are the existing land holdings that council own and what ones are surplus to requirements and things like that. I've been through it a couple of
I
times.
don't think John's asking for surplus to requirements. He's asking what land do we own that could otherwise be used for community purposes, and are we currently using for community purposes within this area that's going to be intensified?
I mean, as we grow and need more facilities, we'll have a long list in the capital projects. And part of that is what goes where.
If I can suggest, like the interesting thing with this like options, we all say, I'm not sure. But if you think about Mana Tahuna came to us asking for land on space on a reserve. What does that look like in 15 years' time with the development up there? So it changes the nature of that space. So if what you've asked for there, John, is exactly the step that needs to happen if you carry it through onto the shortlist. So this is what we're asking. If you want us to explore to that kind of level of the next tier down of detail, not the nth degree, but the next tier down, and bring that conversation forward, ask the team to take it through to the shortlist. That's really, it's as simple as that. Like if you're interested enough to hear a bit more, put it through on the shortlist.
Okay, John?
I think there is real value in keeping it there to give the community groups, and I can think of one who could be very interested actually, or maybe it's 7. Mana Whenua could have a distinct interest in doing something really, really interesting with that land. So we can't shut it out. We don't need to do much. Remember the drum list. Hang on, can we
develop it for Mana?
No.
You already said develop the site as a community space. We
Yeah,
develop it.
So keep the option on the table, not to do that, but just so that we can get community input on views that they might want to do something. So therefore, the way it's written, as John said, is probably too narrow. But I think we need to listen. There may well be some good ideas out there. I don't think we shut them out. I don't think we should put a lot of work into it at this stage because the work might get done by those organisations.
You only see
So it's
what
not on a
others-
short list or it isn't on a short list?
you only
I
see
think
what
it's on-
others develop the site.
It's on a long list that we're going through to decide if it goes to a short list.
That's good stuff. Purely see what others develop the
Yeah.
site from community space.
It might get confusing. The way that I look at it is that it's a premium piece of land that has big lake views, really high value. If I was to do an objective look at where I'd want community facilities, I wouldn't choose that land and buy it if I was first place. So that tells me that I'd be better to sell it and then use that money to buy land where I would want to have community facilities. And again,
Which is number 3.
which is one of the three.
That's kind of
So that's what I'm trying to condense it into. Everybody keeps doing this opportunistic observation of because we have it, we should do it. We shouldn't think of opportunistic, we should think more strategic around the long-term needs because it's long-term.
Okay, I'm going to throw that back and say it might be we get lots of money for selling that, but is there land elsewhere that could be purchased that would be materially cheaper? Because
Or capital investments.
or capital investments, because that's the question. It's all right, so we can sell it, and they go, oh, there isn't anywhere else. Yeah, so what there is a bit of land that council own. I think we're potentially, I mean, I'm not sure if our Lakeview experience is influencing this, but what are we thinking about the value of that land? That might be something we have to have a discussion in PX about.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all got a view as to what it's worth, and I think we need a reality check on that.
I do think we're not making a decision here and we can't, sitting on the table, we can't put up our hands and get a majority view and go, we're bypassing it. Therefore, given that 3 people have said it should be potentially in the shortlist, I don't think it should be excluded based on some sort of vote. If there is.
You're saying 3 people put it in as a vote.
No, what I'm saying is, there is still a view around the table from some people that it should be in the shortlist. We cannot go.
You can have the same idea.
We cannot.
You have to give me something, some vision of what you.
We cannot go through this and make a decision here with a majority view. If it's this contentious, bring it back to a meeting and we'll kill it.
We need to keep this running on the next one.
It's easier to strike the ones that we don't want, and then maybe we
Well,
won't.
give us an option that you don't want.
I don't want to give it at nil cost to the Queenstown Lakes Community Housing Trust. I don't think it's the appropriate transaction.
Is that sell?
Sell at nil cost, transfer to
Did
QL.
we leave those sort of high alignment options and focus on those medium ones?
Well, the one, I think, you've got this, you've got a view here that's the exact opposite of the one that was suggested as final alignment.
Can I speak to that one further?
Yep, sure.
I think that one should be left in as an option. I'm not saying that's definitely it, but I do think because that has been brought to us a number of times by the Housing Trust as an option, I think it should be left in at this stage to explore and to ask. This one, I believe we should ask the community on much more than the community space, which is completely hypothetical.
The advantage of having that one in is you then do the assessment, objective assessment of it against the others. And so then there is an objective discussion with the community and with the Housing Trust if you decide not to go down that path.
The only downside with that is to create an unreal expectation that we would, make that choice and look, and go to Cody's point, I'm fully supportive of the work of the Housing Trust, but I have serious reservations about, the opportunity cost, if you like, of the money that would come from this. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I think we've overcomplicated this. I think it's a very, we've sort of made decisions on it in the past. This isn't the first time this has been brought. It was only deferred effectively from the Lakeview decision because it was not the right time. It was sort of, hold on to it for a few years, increase its value and sell it later on was effectively the decision that council made at the time. And as I said, subject to timing, I would prefer just to say, us to have a decision as to whether we sell it or don't sell it. And if we don't sell it, then we can continue to explore whatever options are on the table. I think we're sort of, and just one last point, and I'll just make, I can't be any clearer on this point, is I think any option where we dig into the ground, demolish any buildings, are involved in any hybrid development opportunities is mad, because the risk associated with even digging a hole in that ground is outside of my comfort zone.
So you've probably just reduced the value of that land by half. Thank you, David. Well,
it's fine.
Can I just give a little bit of context? I think it might be helpful
So
as
go
a reminder. we've come at you, Carrie is leading this work as a policy advisor to give a really balanced, fulsome set of options, which we heard after the Housing Trust came through to talk to you. They've lobbied him many times. You wanted to, really, truly, what are the range of options? It has come to the table a number of times before, but it's usually come from the perspective of a specific project for a specific piece of work. So we wanted to actually work collectively across all those different teams to give you the full range, to give you the nuance. It is deliberately complicated. It is a complex proposition that's in front of you here. Yes, you can boil them up to sell or don't sell, but ultimately to make that decision to do one or the other, you probably have to have a bit of an understanding of the nuance beneath that. And we're trying to present that to you in a palatable way without diving you into hundreds of pages of detail at this page. So that's where this has come from and why it's a different approach from the one we've used in the past.
I think you've done.
And we've already had the reason for the different options rather than just sell or don't sell is so that if you are making a decision to sell, you know the opportunity cost of selling, because the value that you get from the other options in your minds and the communities might be greater than the financial value we get from selling it, which is why we're looking at the broad range because essentially all these other options are just helping you determine the value of not selling it. Because these are the different things you could do with them and how they align with the objectives that you want to achieve.
Oh, Terry, can you mind for me, because I have a strong bias here. When the Housing Trust came here, how many units could they put on there? And would it be multi-story, multi-family? What's sort of the range? Is it 100 to 300? Is it 10 to 30? About what is it?
I think it's 200, isn't it, or something?
Something like that.
So this would be brought through as part of looking at the long list though.
Yeah, they have a
We don't have that at the top.
They have a proposal on the
They have
table.
got a proposal.
Just saying how much, what is it? It's the question.
Approximately what is it?
Do you have a recollection of what the Housing Trust had proposed? I mean, it was they were very preliminary, so they would be highly subject to.
How many units?
So it's about 120 and 150, I think, units.
Say that again.
120 to 140 units, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah. They're the high level.
Thanks.
Well, I like all your green ones and I like 1, 2 and 3 if we were going out for consultation without doing too much work, more of a sense check than a detailed thing. But I think your green ones are great. And I think 1, 2 and 3, and I think the community would love to say on all of them. And I think it would give us a more informed, allow us to make a more informed decision.
To acknowledge the points that you've made, I think this was extremely helpful to help grow what are the exhaustive lists of, how we could frame it. That's why I want to give you a sense of where I'm coming from with this, as, to then move to the next step of that's sort of what my contribution is going to be. Essentially, I find I can see us, attributing some capital value towards a housing trust from the sale of that. But my reservation again is the fact of what would you do objectively with that land, regardless of, whether we own it or not, and then do the best thing for that. And in my view, I see that as at the right time selling it to the market, taking a portion of that and giving it to the housing trust, but finding another piece of land throughout Queenstown Lakes that we could reinvest that money that was more appropriate for those outcomes. Having affordable housing on the edge of a cliff overlooking multi-million-dollar views just seems a little strange when you pitch that as an option.
So the other point that you raised is one of the other options.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's where I'm leaning. Not to say that you haven't thought of it, but I'm saying that's where I'm leaning to give you direction on where my head's at as a representative of the community.
I would, given the timeframes that discussed before, I'd rather see that we just consult on it during the LTP as a minor topic, sell it or don't sell it, or come up with something else, and that leapfrogs all the extra investigation we have to do in the meantime, because it just puts as not if the decision we're asking, not if the decision we're asking of the community is, do you want to sell it or do you want to give to the housing trust or something?
Wow.
That's totally different.
Or use the community space.
Anyway, I've just been down this whole rabbit hole so many times of trying to come up with grand, fancy,
There's something grand and fancy about
creative ideas about I think we've got an easy decision, and it's not complicated.
It's a community asset, and if we do decide to sell it, the community might like to know what funds are going towards it or not. Yeah, but you're saying sell or don't sell, and these are specific options that we're looking for, specific feedback on, and it helps to direct the community's mind to what could happen with it.
I mean, I think the
So it's
question, just to try and zoom out a bit, the question we're trying to answer is, what is the purpose that we want that land to provide? Is, at a high level, is it just a pot of money that can be used for other things, sell? And then the discussion is, what is the best way to sell? How much risk do we have an appetite for? What plan changes do we want? So you've got to, if that is the purpose, to generate a pot of money, and then the discussion is what happens to that. Or is the purpose to as it's land that can be provided, to enable affordable housing, however you define that, and there's a lot of different models as to how that could be achieved. So maybe it's a really binary high-level decision. Well, is it income or is it an opportunity for housing? And that is maybe the question that I would put to the community.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting. But
well, they say sell or not sell. But I mean, I think it's the purpose.
Yeah, but I think we've got to remember that council have a range of different types of assets. Right? We have reserves, we have strategic assets, we have functional assets, we have all these different things, and council hold a bunch of land that is freehold council land that we have the ability to make. And in fact, we've done it already this year. We've sold 5.6 hectares of land that was freehold council land that we just made a decision to sell. We didn't consult the public on it. We didn't do anything. We just sold it. We put it on the market and sold it. And, that's sometimes where we are in a position to make those decisions. Then I haven't seen anything that would demonstrate that this has any strategic role in any of our programs, save, and I accept that it could, if you want affordable housing, you could put it in that box. But beyond that, I think we haven't got any strategic purpose for it.
I agree with you that you can make these decisions faster than you have in other locations. However, historically, I would suggest that this has got a different strategic role because it has become a real area of focus in the conversations around Lakeview, in the decisions that have been made around Lakeview. There are council resolutions that relate to this block of land. So I do think it has a slightly different status and does require some expression. And just to remind you as well, the reason we're doing this work was on the back of the presentation that the Housing Trust gave to you in the early stages of triennium, and we were tasked to go and do this. So it's within your purview to stick a pin in it, to hold it, to delay it, but we have just been reacting as options to it.
You've done a good job. In the context, particularly in our talking about and reacting to and actually achieving some change in central government policy around fast tracks, there is more to the value of the land in this district than the dollars attached to it. So here's an opportunity for us to say, what that piece of land, it's not a cliff, it's kind of steep, but what are the opportunities for us to get from that? There are some, yet we could realise the capital, the value of it. There's significant risk in that, and we've seen that with Lakeview. So I wouldn't like us to be involved in any development of that site. Really, I would rather someone else dealt with the risk. If it were to be a community group of whatever sort, including a community housing trust that picked it up, it would be beneficial for them to own that risk because they have other funding streams available to them that we don't. Similarly, if a community group picked it up to do something with it, they would have other opportunities that we simply don't. But I just reiterate the point that it's not, value is not just dollars. It's what's the opportunity for us to do something that would be a legacy into the future more than just paying down a bit of debt.
I agree with that. And also, Quinn, with respect, I push back because I can play the NBA thing and say, this is not part of our board. This is not part of what we do for our board. And so, in fact, we should just get rid of it because we make chocolates and this is bread or something like that. But in fact, we have an option here to fulfill a social contract with the community to provide social housing.
Well,
and also holding it under the public bond lease gives us optionality down the road. but we have this option, but just selling it because it doesn't fit and because we don't want to be in the real estate business. We're in all sorts of businesses that, you know, are legacy businesses. And this, I think this is a wonderful legacy to have because we can make a really good choice for the
I
community.
didn't argue against the affordable housing thing. I just said it's not, I didn't argue against that.
Yeah.
We do have the option to give it to the housing trust. And it is an option before us.
Or lease.
I think,
Well,
yeah,
I don't know what it
just one point on the lease is that makes it very hard for the housing trust to be borrowed to
Yeah.
develop it. That's the problem that they've come up against time and time again. So the lease sell, even though
There
there's
were-
the perception that we're keeping it actually hinders them doing what they need to do.
There are leases and there are leases.
Yeah.
And that would be,
And this-
that would be all assessed as part of
Yeah.
the assessment.
I mean,
If we take these options to the next level, which means that one might come out as having lower outcomes than if we gave it or nominally sold it.
a 99-year lease, 2 rights of renewal on a 33-year lease is effective ownership, which you can borrow against.
I feel like the opportunity cost of not doing something with it, you could develop Manawa and Pacific Hub and have all the community facilities off of Stanley Street. You do Warren Park, which has had plans in there, but sitting there with no budget funding. There's a huge amount of, you could, you know, create a whole bunch of solar that reduces our overall costs and expenses, but then house initiatives. I feel like we're not being imaginative enough to know like what this could actually create on the outside of it, versus, you know, because it's there, it feels like a very skewed thinking. So I just think there's a huge, wide array of value that we could offer to the community with those funds redistributed in a way that's quite proactive rather than constantly sitting on this, having the same tussle back and forth, which is why I want to see us move on with it.
We need to move on.
Matt, have you got some thoughts?
Oh, I just think there's a range of views around the table, which is probably reflective of the views we're going to get in the feedback. I think if we restrict it too much though, and don't give all the options available for people to give feedback on, then we're probably doing a disservice, given the history of this site. And there is a bit of legacy in this particular site, and yeah, a lot of people are interested in it. So I don't think we can move quickly on this. Basically.
So I was just gonna, just say that. So we're going through the process here, but Michelle's point, like we're sitting here because the Housing Trust sat at the end of this table and said to us, we could do something cool with that bit of land. And so the job for us as a group, I think, is to say, well, do we want to let them pursue that or not? And it sounds to me like the collective agreement is probably not. There's probably heaps of other things that could be done for not that.
No, I don't think there's.
Was the collective agreement that we do want to give it? Because I'm not.
I don't think we're there yet. I think we're wanting to get the community.
But no, the collective agreement states ask the community what they want for it.
What we're
If they
after-
want to follow different options, then why don't they?
So what we're looking for today is a collective view about which of 1, 2, 3, and 4 we should add to the list of green things we're already assessing at the next stage, so that you can, so that you can come up with, so that you can decide on what the future use should be. You don't need to land on now which one of these you like or don't like.
Okay.
I would like to add 3. That is one I'd like to add.
I'd like to.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, true.
I'd like to add 1, but with QLDC or others, and
Just as
potentially 2. I mean, sell at market value with no restriction on funds. It's a valid option.
Oh,
So that's going through.
well, we've already, we are the restriction. We make the decision on how it's spent.
Yeah.
Just remember. So, you know, why are we trying to double restrict how we choose to spend it down the track?
Because we should listen to what our community.
So we do that with Sker Heights.
First, before we make
That's
the
that's
decision.
what we do. That's exactly what we do.
But this is about what options that we are specifically taking to the community for them to comment on. Can we just, if we're going to go out consultation anyway, as long as we don't have to do too much work on any of them to develop them before that.
I mean, I'm just so mindful of the fact that, you know, however many times we've said to government in the last year that we want the inclusionary zoning and everything we've done to go there because there's this huge lack of affordable housing and we're saying, oh, this is too good for people to live. You know, it's too expensive, the views are too good. Yeah, I mean, because
That's not. I don't think that's a
too valuable zones for affordable housing. So that's what.
Hang on, that's not the argument. The argument is that value can provide more affordable
Yeah.
housing.
You can provide
Somewhere else.
Yeah, where, show me where that money
Needs
would
are.
go.
Okay, the staff just need numbers, so where do you think the rest of
Where
us-
I'm at, I'm hearing the appetite to
Okay.
have an investigation into 1, 2, and 3, but there's been no discussion that I've got so far on this fourth one.
No.
Yeah, okay, so that's one.
So Nikki's initial gambit of the 4 green and then 1, 2, 3, is that where you found it?
I am quite against 1 because I think it's setting up expectations for failure.
So do I, but I also don't mind. I think it'll be interesting to see what people think. I just think it's very important with how we explain it, you know.
I think it's probably worth noting for 1, it will still be high level analysis when it comes back about what could be done with the site. We have a huge amount of thinking and talking to do with you around what we're investing in community services on our current sites with our current facilities that we are trying to wrangle at the moment as part of the LTP. So we can't put significant amount of work at the same time into fully exploring all of the community uses for that site. So if you wanted a more fulsome exploration, it would have to be done a bit later. Or when it comes back, it'll be more possibilities than,
That's what
you know,
I mean.
actual master planning for the site or anything. I just wanted to make that clear because, you know, I've spent this morning,
Yeah.
you know, working through the community services stuff you're going to be talking about next week.
So do you
And there's a lot of things we still need to work through
So do you
there.
think that could be quite dangerous going out to the community with just high level kind of possibilities where?
Well, we could come back with what Penny's alluding to, this high level, and you could see that and determine formally, okay, we don't probably want to go to the community with that, but at least you'll have seen.
So we
that.
get
But
to see
Penny's
it.
outlining the reality that it's not going to be like a line by line investigation at this point.
Yeah.
And you will have also then had the LTP discussions about the capital program and how restricted we are going to be in investing in our current facilities and planned facilities where we've already made plans to do things that we haven't yet invested in.
That's why I think it's not good.
So in that sense, then, almost given the reality of available resourcing, then if there were a one, it would be community options, that options for developing the site for community use be explored, not that we develop it, because I don't think anyone wants us to get into that.
So would that be, you could call for expressions of interest? Or, you know, that provides that anything else sort of option. If you wanted to test that.
That would be the only, that would be a way to approach it if that's what you want. I heard a lot of sharp and takes from your suggestion.
I mean, I think if you're going to go out with 1 and take your others develop the site, you know, you need to say, you know, what would you like it developed for? If you've got a proposal, then by all means, you know, if it's a high level, just chuck it in the mix. I mean, God, information doesn't hurt. You know, we need to hear ideas. Doesn't mean we're going to follow up on them. It just means that we're really informed and really make some decisions.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't mean we're going to follow up on them. So why are we asking people to come
Because
up
we
with
might.
ideas?
One of the things we might be able to do, is depending on how the timeline for this plays out, as you're all acknowledging this isn't a quick conversation. It might be that we're coming into the LTP engagement process with this conversation. We could frame it a certain way that people are going to give us their ideas for what bits of land they want to use for what during that process anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that, so I think we'll do this next stage and then we'll think about how we put things out to the committee depending on what this table thinks about the options that come back to it.
Thank you.
So just a point on the community, us developing it for community use. Another thing to keep in mind is the infrastructure strategy direction that was given was this hub and spoke model, but focused on building that and focusing investment in the priority growth areas rather than fitting. Yeah. So.
I think we should lose sites on an easy site.
Yeah.
No.
So which
So I
makes us.
think taking GODC out of that might be the better.
Others develop sites or community.
Which takes us to the other question you had about value. If you want to talk about that, then we can
expectations.
We can talk about the risk. Roger can talk to that.
We keep talking about risk, but how people view the site and what value is attached to it. We think there's a risk, but others might think Oh, no, we don't.
Well, it's little compared with what they want to do with it.
Exactly.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Do we want to have a short PX session to talk about value or risk or what we know, or do we just want to leave part that?
We don't need to be small.
Sorry,
Do we have a ballpark? We don't need to be small.
we'll need PX to discuss it based on the email that he sent last night.
I don't think, will knowing change any of the options that we want to go out to consult on? Not really,
no.
because we can, you
No,
know,
it doesn't.
it doesn't.
So
So,
the next one.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell them. You
Okay,
get
so
them assess the
Yeah,
value.
yeah, let them do it.
one more question around, so it's a district-wide asset. Does that mean that the Upper Clutha should be benefiting from this as well?
Is
Well,
it a
the-
different wide asset?
No, if it does be.
Have we-
Well, the sell at market value funds go.
We don't, in our,
I think we'd need to just have a little look at how it's currently classified in the system and. how it's-
So if we
can bring
apply,
that back as part of the next.
yeah, if we apply it how we normally would when we sell land, it just goes back to pay debt. So it just, so that benefits everybody. Well, doesn't actually.
There
it's
are,
not true.
there are,
So,
are other specific arrangements. though,
no,
so,
there
yeah.
are, yeah.
So we're just gonna have a little look.
But yeah, I mean, I still feel like our most valuable land asset that we have is a car park at the moment. And it's a car park because we can't agree on how we're going to move forward on it. And I do think, no, I'm talking about Stanley Street. Oh. And like it's sitting there dormant, literally as a car park.
Certainly money.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I agree on that, but it's paid off in 12 months. The opportunities that we could do with the sale of that, then reinvest into that location, that's very central and has access and obviously has a lot of strategic importance. That's sort of where I'm going to with the point of the opportunity cost.
But the community would look at the benefit of that car park if you're a business.
Yeah.
In a far different light.
That's a business interest, not a community.
Yeah, but it's.
Business community.
Community.
Why not if you're like a not-for-profit? What about all the community facilities we could build for all of these great organizations in a place that's very central, next to where they already is?
Anyway, I think we land,
Is that off track?
are we, did we land on
Just trying to keep it.
striking the QLDC from point one to avoid expectations, to just put others develop the site as a community space?
Just take out the QLDC.
Yeah.
Take out the QLDC?
Just said work.
Develop that site.
Just you work your magic on it. Yeah, make it come up.
Yeah, I don't think I wanted this over land, absolutely.
We're good to go.
Well,
So we have, we've reduced.
Nothing but-
So we've taken off one thing, which is 4, yes?
Yeah,
And the things to cross through.
And the things that are already crossed through. So everybody's happy with that?
yeah, go.
So we're making sure
The
that
green,
it's
can we X out the lease in the green as well, like? Can we just
no.
remove lease it together?
Yeah, just get a bit.
Like,
but
if it's
that's-
on lease,
oh, I see what you mean, lease to.
like,
This one.
I don't think it should be a lease option at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Take rid of leases.
It doesn't work for the housing trust.
I think it's a hold option, but I'd like to know the difference between the uplift between this plan change and what's worked out.
We're saying, we're taking out any kind of a lease.
Because we said if we give it to the community trust as a lease, it's really problematic because of the external
Yeah, but
funding that they
he-
have.
But we don't,
That is not correct.
given the inherent
Right,
risk
it's
in that
not
land,
correct.
we don't want to be the owner of it if someone else is developing it. I don't think, is my view.
Okay, but if it's an housing trust, it's different. It
Because
gives
it's
us the
like,
option
tunnel
to.
down, don't you?
Other than
It's
that,
not be the owner.
If it's a housing trust, like it's still in perpetuity for the community. We don't need
Then
to
why is
own
it-
it.
It's not in perpetuity. It's over the course of the lease. Some places long-term lease.
Yeah, I think that's right.
There are leases- there are leases like that.
I leave it at
Leave it at-
leave it in the lease,
But,
leave in everything.
Heath and Roger can talk more to this. And this might need PX, but there is an assumption at the moment that we are doing some rehabilitation, clearing of the site. And the cost of that is in the LTP CapEx program.
Yeah.
That we talked to last week. So I think one of you raised it in the session. So there is an assumption built in at the moment that we do site clearance and things of the site before it is either sold or. And so that, developing it,
Why?
we're already touching the site based on the current assumptions.
There's a bit of a risk there though, because
Yeah.
there's still buildings on it. We're not wiping the buildings out. So what happens if there's asbestos in the buildings, because this stuff spreads, it's dust. So you go and do part of it, but then you take the other buildings down, and then you might have to go back over the top again. Why would
I think
we,
it's more about finding
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
we know what's sitting here above the ground. It's below the ground.
it's just investigation.
Well, to investigate, you much have to dig up everything. So
Like to sell it
you
to
go
somebody
down
else,
that
it's just removal.
black hole that you talked about in terms of how much.
That's what you said.
Well, that's his where.
Yeah, that's just it.
That's-
Why
that's
do even
exactly
do
what
this?
you
Because
sell.
someone might
That's his where.
concrete over the top of it, and you never have to disturb the line.
That's his where is the market determines the risk.
But within that,
That's,
though,
Yeah, but
that's
in
an
the-
option that can be explored though, as part
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
part of it.
Yeah, so we don't need to mind that.
meanwhile, though, there is some management of the site that's necessary. Otherwise, we are exposed to liability and risk just by leaving it the way it is. So potentially, it's there.
There's only 11 occupied at the moment. Out of
We're
40.
just it's about the future, about the management,
Yep.
and Roger's team is
Yeah.
deals with the now.
Yeah.
This is the future. Okay.
But in terms of leasing it, I don't see the risk, even if somebody else develops
mix.
and they screw it up, because we write that into the contract, that we have no liability. We simply are eventually the beneficial owner with a very, very, very long-term lease. So it gives us two options. One, we can develop it for whatever we want. Obviously, I like the housing trust. And the other thing is we get the option to take it back. And we're always on the land.
Yeah.
And we can write a contract that indemnifies us against anything that they might do.
But we're not like a, just to throw, devil's advocate, we're not just someone who can walk away, we're a council. And so if something goes wrong
But
with the
it's-
stuff on our leased land, it is on it.
Yeah, but I mean, there's the social piece, which is, to me, it's just the right thing to do.
I don't think you can have lessees knocking down our door under those terms somehow.
No, except for the housing trust.
I don't think they would either. 'Cause they can't finance anything. They don't have the ability to finance anything if they do that. So they won't, they're out of the mix.
With a 99-year lease, you have effective
Sorry,
ownership.
that was.
People finance buildings in London all the time and they're on a platform lease. Most of London's on a platform lease.
So are we now keeping 4 in, or are we taking out 4 and the other lease option?
I think it was taking out 4 and just leaving the other one in.
Okay.
Right, look, it's really reassuring because our discussions have been really robust as well. I'm glad some of these discussions echo around the table. Yeah, just a snapshot there that we're doing this work now. And what's to come ahead is looking for a formal determination on the outputs that, so that you'll have more information before you on those options. And yes, any public engagement that happens, we'll do that closely with significance engagement policy. Thank you.
Well, excellent.
Okay.
We're the ones supposed to make the decisions, right? Yeah, that's what we're like. Right,
Right. Excellent. Oh, thank you.
future home of council services.
Next, warming us up.
On an easy one.
Sorry, I didn't mean to push that.
No, you're supposed to, that's your job. Nice down there, isn't it?
It is. Just has something interesting, yeah.
Here we go. We've put the council building.
Yeah. Can I say something before we get going in this one?
Yeah.
So I've been through the slide deck, and the headline is that the community consultation said they want council to build on our own land and they want to move it to Frankton. So hopefully this hour won't be just going over that. We'll be talking about how and where we can build in Frankton, what it'll cost, what the other options to go to market and lease off somebody would be, and that sort of stuff. Is that going to be part of today's conversation discussion?
Simplification. Where is the next council?
If that's the direction that you would, as a group, and you want to move forward, and that's the feedback we've got, that would be pathway A.
So,
and therefore,
was that going to be part of today's conversation?
and that's what we would look
at consultation.
So I don't think it's part of today's conversation. It's just feeding back around the community engagement, looking to get input and steering from what are the next steps. So we've not made any assumptions about going to that next level of costing all various options. That's not what today is about. So as I understand it, Paul, just coming back around, you asked the community engagement. This is the results. I want to go through that and get a steer from you about next.
So within hours talk about how community said we should go to Franklin and we should.
We don't need to take an hour.
Build our own.
No, but heaps has changed since then, right? No, a
We
lot
don't,
changing.
we don't need to take an apple. Can we just maybe, so we work through and bring your hands on that?
I'll hand over to Paul. I'm acting as Megan today, so
Okay,
I'm a new face in the cab.
okay, but yeah, I mean, just reiterating, we know where we've come from, we know what the discussion's been multiple times.
Yeah.
I think we've read the pie charts.
Yeah.
So I guess it's really what you want from us now, apart from going through the pie charts.
Yeah, I think it's
For the
getting
purpose,
clarity on the pathway and the direction.
Yeah.
so, would you like me to go through the slide deck or not?
Well, the elephant in the room is we've got a rates cap and we've got local government simplification. We don't know what the council's going to look like down the track. We don't know how many people are going to have to house. Is this something we should be considering now? We're talking about housing and leasing and how we manage the interim, because I just don't see how we can decide to spend money on something when we have no idea who we're going to be in the future.
Chair, if you don't mind, I could probably synthesise some of this conversation and the slide deck down to sort of 3 points.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. So the purpose is to review the feedback that we've been through. I think I had the benefit of spending many hours over the month talking to members of the community and everyone else on it. And that was a fruitful exercise, and there was a lot of information that came out of that. The first point I want to make is place is important to many people, and place means a lot to many people, whether it's proximity to where they work, whether it's how they work within a space, but ultimately it comes down to how we as an organisation, people within the organisation interact with our community, and it's those connections that is really important. So that's kind of the location / place thing, and there are variations and many views around that. The second one is funding and financing. And the funding and financing thing, as you all know, it's a strong thing that's come through, and it's just something that's happening for us and everyone at this point in time. And there are marginal differences between the form of how you deliver this building or not. Those things are marginal differences. They're small differences. That probably the clear thing that I wanted to sort of get across to you is kind of the difference between a family deciding whether they want to rent the next 30 years or whether they actually want to go to the bank and get a mortgage. And that's the difference for us in this. So ultimately, the timing of payments and the pathway or the cash flows, where does the money go in those options that you're bringing up, Heath? How do you follow the money and when is that done? I.e., can we afford it given everything else is probably a more poignant conversation. And then lastly, I think it's what we're signaling to the market, I guess, out there in terms of our current leasing arrangements, our current partnerships, or a potential third-party developer around that. What are we giving some clarity to that? So as an organisation, we can signal to the market, hey, this is the direction we're going. And to your point, Nikki, that could be something that's the status quo, but that in itself is a signal to how we manage our accommodation. So I'll just I can leave it at that if you'd like me to open up through you.
Well, I think that's really helpful, thank you. And it comes down to where and how. It would probably help. Because often we're renting. Yep, no, okay. And this will be an asset. Yes, for you that could be sold. So I guess one of the questions the councils will need to think about down the line potentially, or we might just say it's a chief executive job, it's a pure efficiency, cost benefit, staff organisational thing, which I think in a lot of places, council executives would just decide. I don't know. But it'd be really quite good to understand if we threw, because if we lease something, we have to pay rent. We're paying rent at the moment, so you know, what are the savings that might arise from leasing a single new building versus being free? If you know, but equally, if we sold everything and bought, you know, built something, then you know we're saving on the rent. So what's it's what's the cash flow? What's the sums? You know, because many people who are paying rent would actually cover their mortgage costs, but they just haven't got the deposit, right? So it's how does it? What's the financial comparisons?
What's our numbers down the track? And can we squeeze into Church Street, or you know, I don't know.
I mean, this, but we own this.
Yeah.
We don't own Church.
You don't own Church Street.
We can't squeeze into everything.
So where do we want to go? So figurative on this discussion. I mean, there's a very clear feedback that it should be at Frankton. I mean, I think that's it's difficult to put the organisation on the spot, but I think there's probably an organisational view on what would work best as well for the organisation. So I think that's something we need to be very cognizant of, and that comes across. I mean, I'm not sure whether.
Are we honestly talking about moving or doing anything until we've got a bit more certainty? I mean, if we're looking at the timeframes of when we know more, you know, we've got an election, we've got next year, we've got a bit more certainty on what reforms we'll do. Why would we? Because firstly, the feedback that we've had from the public doesn't take into account the new context, not at all. We haven't, you know, and if we went back out, they would weigh in and say.
I don't disagree, but I don't think it means you don't move forward at all.
Well,
because it's the question that are you at a critical decision point? We're not at a critical decision point. We're not even close to a critical decision.
Well, what is the decision? What is the direction?
Well, do we progress? What do we progress with exploring the options? And I mean, if I may, I still maintain that the delivery mechanism is the key variable and determinant here of which option we choose. So, you know, talking about locations and stuff is a little bit moot until we've got some delivery options on the table. Yeah. Now we've had.
What do you mean by that?
It means lease.
Does someone else build and we lease it? Does someone on someone else's land, on council land, on well, of course, but the notes we're never going to be comparing everything because each of those variables. I mean, it's a bit like we had something recent. I won't say what it was because I think it was PX, but there was one where the options where we did it were, you know, almost 3 times as much because the capital cost and the.
There was a report done on that. There is a report with lease by a whole detail.
Yeah, but not looking at actual projects. Until you've actually got somebody who's going to build it on their land and offer it to you, it's not a project.
Yeah.
Can I just help maybe differentiate the difference here and kind of what's come through as we've gone through this building block? And I'll go back to the discussion the last time this went to council, and I think there was a discussion around it, you know, should we lease an existing building or a new building? And there is a nuance between going to a developer and saying, hey, we're looking for a bespoke building suitable for council purposes that would fit that. And that's probably a type of exercise that you would run, which is invariably a longer lease than your normal lease that you get an existing building. And, you know, it's a difference between what I think was brought up before, which is, let's say, the previous proposal on the Stanley Street site, which was a bespoke building, and we haven't been able to compare apples with that because under this arrangement, we would be looking to do a new building. But what I'm hearing from the property team and from the people we have around here, we would probably look at that building specification and we could probably deliver something quite on comparable that you might find in the market anyway. So going back to my original point, at the start there's marginal differences whether it's a two-story house or a one-story house, or it's got an ensuite or not. Those are the types of things that is another discussion down the line. The big one here is, where do you want to put the house? And do you want to lease it and effectively, or build it yourself as kind of, or do you want to finance it yourself, or do you want to take market rent on it? They're kind of the bigger one.
No, you carry on.
So, I haven't been into a lot of the detail of this, but there's been a debate around, do we stick with the current 4 buildings and down here, do we go for one? We need to make that call. What this is asking for though is that we need some direction. Because if we look at one building, and what's recommended in here is it in town or is it at Frankton? There are some fundamentally different drivers for that, and we do need. If you go, we need one or the other, then we can come back with all the work that needs to be done around what they look like. I think personally that the location leads the methodology of delivery. If you pick Frankton, we know that we've got some land there. We know that we've been approached by 2, 3, 4 developers who will offer us things. My own view is if you can decide on whether, if there is going to be one office, it's here or out there, which is a pretty big decision, and give us the ability to then go and look at how that might be delivered, because only at that point can we come back with, here are the cost structures, here's what it look like. Do you want to include other components if we had it? And on a bit of council land that we currently own and have some facilities there, then what does that offer in terms of a broader precinct, all those sorts of things. But until we get the location here or Frankton, we are stuck. We can't answer those questions around costs, methods of delivery, all those things.
But there is one bit in the middle, time.
Time.
That we
Exactly.
because we could do a lot of work, and we're
And then
3
you-
years away from 4 years.
But there will always be the next thing that's changing, right? So that's well, there's always.
We're going to need a building.
If we have, look, it may be that we will need a building, but then it depends on the size of the
But I think
functions may
that we can
change and
progress knowing that we're going to need a building.
I'd say, please don't do too much, because we don't want to spend a whole lot of money.
So, I'm interested.
Frankton,
We're interested in the view.
Yes, sorry, I thought you said there was interesting news, something else that came out of one.
Well, that's possible.
Tell it.
It's been half an hour, right?
Yeah, that's right, there's a gap out there. So I think that in that discussion, I think there's some really cogent points that we need to keep a handle on. Irrespective of what happens in local government over the next few years, there will need to be an administration building somewhere in this basin. There clearly needs to be in Wanaka as well. It's another story. We're only talking about here. Those opportunities, and I keep pushing this, kind of like a broken record, because there are other agencies, central government agencies, who are also in currently leased arrangements, which are entirely inadequate. All their leases are running out in town. So there's an opportunity here, sort of, to bring all of those pathways together over the next few years to have some sort of government precinct that means that we're in a far more resilient and connected future. So I think we can't wait for the next decision of whatever the government's going to do. We still need to go forward. I don't think we need to design a totally bespoke building just for our needs. We need to look at what would a building that would meet our needs and potentially have other uses too. So a flexible approach, we can do that. All of that is inachievable here. So it gives us options, and it gives us options to do things far more creatively with the land that we own in town. So I think clearly the community have made their voice fairly clear. From a geographic central place theory model, Frankton Flats, it has to be there. It cannot be here. At the same time, probably still needs to be a service centre here of some sort.
Yeah, library here anyway.
All of that. So I think we've got a trajectory that's going in the right direction. We've got the community with us, which is great. And let's do something positive with it and work with partner agencies and come up with something that's going to meet a whole lot of other objectives and probably save the ratepayers money.
I think I agree with all of that.
Can I just ask a question, what other government agencies you're talking about?
themes, police, justice.
CDM.
Yep, a whole bunch.
Housing trust.
So there's a whole lot of who
And
would,
do they all lease?
uh,
The court,
another, yes, well, I'm not sure, but interestingly, in Christchurch, Justice became the master developer of the site that became the Justice and Emergency Management Precinct. But police, their properties owned by Kotoka.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about here, sorry. No, the concept, this is what we've worked through internally, is this concept of a hub.
Yep.
But nonetheless, we have recognised that this has been quite an ongoing thing, and we kind of went down a hub with Project Manila site, and there was some opportunities there, but like you say, the trajectory, and I tried to do that with the building block, is it's really about council direction. So the reason why we did all that work on the Manila site, and that was through council direction, and through consultation, there's been a change through that, and now we're looking for a council direction on how can we look at potentially, a Frankton hub.
Yeah.
Just with the 56 who said other, were they thinking Ladies Mile? Or
There was, yeah, I haven't looked, there was a little bit of that, yep, Ladies Mile, I think.
yeah, so that's
I-
well,
Yeah.
it's not an option potentially. So
Wow.
yeah, okay. So basically, we've got 70% that have said Franklin, and then
Ladies
we've got 15% who said not in Queenstown, somewhere else.
Yeah, 350 responses.
Yeah, yeah, okay. All right, so all you need from us is where do you think we want to stick?
Or where do we not want to?
Yeah, and we've got a placeholder for the 6th of October to really sort of clarify this pathway approach, and that's probably what we bring back in front of you. And then, as Roger's explained, this in the property team, there's a bit of work to do around what the delivery might look like. Sorry.
Yep. Good idea, John. So that's all good. John, I didn't enjoy what you just had to say then. It does happen. It's all right, but yeah. And what we're saying here is really, really good. I know that you guys want some direction around Frankton or here, but like to make it a bit easier for us, and why I made the comments at the start of this workshop that I did, like we know what our head count is, we know what we want it to be, we know what our current square meters that we rent are, we can figure that out.
Yeah.
We know what we pay for that, we know what our OPEX costs are now, so we've got a number, we've got a budget already. We know what the square meter rental rate is in 5 Mile. There's a brand new building going in there, and the 550 to 650 depending on what floor you're in. We know that. We can say how many square meters do we need. That's that model. We know what the building costs are for a commercial building per square meter, right? Well, 8.5 to 12 or something, depending where you are and what the spec is. And we know how many square meters. We know what the build cost would be. We know what the funding cost of that would look like over 25 years. Like we have this information. It's just a matter, we wouldn't hold you to it, but it's a matter of saying, option A, we lease, this is what it costs, compared to our current costs in 3 different buildings in town. We build, this is what it looks like in our cash flow. Like, I think we're in a place where we could have that information at a workshop like this, so we can get a bit more, give you a bit more guidance on where we think that would land.
We've had plenty of commercial advice on that from the KPMGs as well, PwCs. We've been through all of this, and as funnily enough reflected here, and as some submitters have said, we have other options. These are all marginal differences. So the big difference is whether it's a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom, like, so that's the thing. So it's the scope of the building, it's the big difference, not necessarily the finance.
That's what Stanley Street doesn't compare to what we currently have and what we're potentially looking at. And I agree with you.
If I may just jump in, if we were a private business right now, we have all the operational information to make a change that we need to make. What we don't have is the confidence in the community understanding, the governance layer. It's those complexities that we need to try and weave these together now. So everything you've just described, we absolutely do that.
First, can't we start with that? Yeah. To try to make a decision.
Hang on, Roger. Want to not use the word bespoke too much.
Yeah.
Just let's use scope.
Yeah.
The thing that we struggle with is the whole of life costs. You're going to be in a building for decades. What we struggle to work out is the rent review at year 21, the rent review at year 29, the rent review at year 33. Those are the things that are hard to quantify. at a point in time now. You can put some parameters in there and try and work it out, but it really.
That's okay, provide for that,
Yeah,
that
it's
variability and the certainty that owning gives us. That's fine, we can deal with that.
You can lease it, it's cheaper if it's, but the owning, we can pay. If we own a building, we can sell it. We can sublease.
Yep.
We can sublease it, it's too big for it. So there's heaps of things that we can do if we just get on and do something.
Yeah, but the other side of that, of course, is if you can't afford it, you can't build it. And so that's where the, going to the market and just going, build us something and we'll fill it. And, we just have to deal with the market variabilities at that point. But there's no point in telling someone who's on $60,000 a year, you'd be much better off if you build a house and live in, down at Jack's Point, because they simply are not going to be able to do it.
So what I'm hearing is that, if we have a steer on a location, then all of this will be in the business case, right? That will all be in a business case. It will be what are the costs, what are the opportunities, what are the risks? Because that's how, if we were here and the organisation was trying to work out what they were going to do, they would have a business case. And it would be pretty straightforward.
Just as a reminder as well, the reason we're coming at this with the location first is because it was a council resolution that asked us to go away and do the engagement and come back to you with it. So that's why we're coming to this way now. Yeah, so now it's a case of we need that steer and then we can take that to the next phase and do all the stuff.
In town, it's triply the price of Frankton as well. Yeah, if we had a bit of a, ballpark number on, do it in town, it's going to cost X, do it in Frankton, it's going to cost a third of it. We might at least for it, we're not going to.
No, we've been down that, we understand that.
How many, just following up on what he said, 8,000.
3.5 square meters.
Thank you. So
So does A mean Frankton area, or if the council gives direction, are you excluding Ladies Mile? That's my first question.
Based on based on the previous council decision and the resolution around that?
Yeah, but
What do you want to open it up?
I would probably say it'd be more comfort if we just said anywhere on the other side of the BP roundabout.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's probably what.
Ladies Mile should be included. It seems silly not to because.
It's the 5 mile corridor.
And then I know, but I'm just saying, I wouldn't want to give direction just on Frankton and exclude Ladies Mile if potentially there was a better option.
Or Remarkables Park, or.
The other thing is.
Doesn't that delete the work that we've just done though?
Yeah.
So why would we?
Ladies Mile was treated strangely.
Sorry, just bring it back, but April 2024, we did the Boffin Miskell report, they did the MCA, BCA. You guys, the council made a decision that there was the location, so if we're wanting to go broader than that, and outside.
What would it hurt? What I'm saying is, what's the difference? To include Ladies Mile and that.
Probably my third point, which is around what our signal to the market is, and what we're looking, so if we're looking to go broader than that out there.
It's more competitive.
What's that?
Creates more options, more competitive, potentially drive your price down. There's no reason not to include Ladies Mile. There was no reason.
Well, there is, because we've excluded it.
We've excluded it, and so it wasn't consulted.
Why did we?
Yeah, what's it?
There was some strange stuff going on through that consultation process, and look,
Sorry, you did ask us to do the consultation, and you were quite happy with the consultation.
why would you? What would be the risk of not?
Doesn't make us small.
Let's forget about what has been and gone. Okay, let's forget about the past.
We just start from scratch.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in terms of what would be the harm in including Ladies Mile as an option. Frankton area Ladies Mile. If you went out for
Okay,
a crucial.
I hear what you're saying, John was saying.
I get an answer. Can I just get an answer?
What would be the harm?
What would be the harm in including?
Well, sorry, you go, sorry.
Is there a genuine view that we should consider 516?
No, this wasn't my question. There
We've
was.
sort of asked.
I asked a question.
I'll try and answer.
So that's my response.
Yeah.
Let's,
Not an answer.
if there's not council, in my view, if there's not council support for 516, then why would we put that in?
Well, I think it's more than,
Council support.
okay, I think it's more than that though, because given everything I just said, 80% of what I just said cannot be achieved at Ladies Mile. It can only be achieved on Frankton Flats because of the co-location of all of the other services and entities and proximity to the airport and the event centre. It only makes sense to do it there. 516 is useful potentially to say, well, if you're not going to come up with a solution, we're just going to do our own thing there. But that won't suit our purposes either. So it's.
But again, back to Quentin's point, if you can't afford it, all I'm saying is I wouldn't want by choosing A to exclude Ladies Mile because we have land, it's flat, it's affordable.
I think
So-
going back to your harm question, I think the harm is that we disrupt the process. We go against the process that you've agreed and participated in over many, many years. And it's repeating work. This can feel a bit like the seventh circle of hell, this project.
Really?
We do have to, we as officers have an obligation to follow the decisions of this council.
But think about all the development that's
I
occurred.
don't disagree with you, but in terms of.
By the time the darn thing's built, Ladies Mile may well be a perfect spot.
The thing is, if we include Ladies Mile, then we have to also include Queenstown Town Centre.
Why?
Yeah.
Because
Because you're testing the market, so if you understand.
because it's the same argument. We went out to consult, and if we're just going to include things that we didn't consult on, let's just put it all back in the mix again. It just doesn't make any sense. We've got to move forward.
My second question was around the
Can I-
status quo.
I've got my hand up still, so before other people jump back in. Have you finished, Mel?
Yeah, I can see my point.
Okay. As far as I can tell, we've got a two-stage decision. Like I said, well, I think we've got to a point where Frankton should be our preferred location based on the advice we've had and the feedback from the community, right? Second one is, can we afford to build it? I think the answer is probably no.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but I think it's not going to take much more than the back of a cigarette packet to work out whether we can afford it. We're far enough to know whether it's within our capacity and within our resources, as in ability to deliver a project of that nature, right? And then you go to market and say, who can provide us a building? Now, I've seen at least 2 buildings that have been offered to us that one of them was fantastic, in a fantastic location, right? And why wouldn't we explore that, test the model, work out whether, they're serious about it, whether they can deliver it, and whether it matches our operation.
And what the conditions would be.
And what the conditions.
Okay, so that
What the
will
opportunities
happen if we land on a location code.
will have.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it most eloquently, and I want to give you direction. Frankton Hub, agree with that, just to state my claim.
I agree too.
We can intensify both the analysis, but also testing the market and finding out what those, because it's all very well putting up nice pictures of a nice building and it's in the right place. But the question is, I mean, a 30-year lease sits on our balance sheet just like a ticket to borrow the money. So it still sits on our balance sheet as a liability, just like borrowing loans. So the question now comes between more around what the building looks like.
Well, that's what.
Would you say scope of the building?
That's
The
okay.
building full of
I
specifications.
think it's what gave me more comfort is, sort of that concept of going, well, this can be partly a civic core, but it can also have all these ancillary needs met. I mean, I was going to ask about the water services CCO and the staffing and the QLDC of the future program. That's all, should relate to that. But I know that it's better that it's all together anyway, regardless of, what IGO's delivering. And an EOC centre in the same regard. And I still feel like in any way you cut it, the hub and spoke is almost a perfect replica of how Queenstown's developed, with the hub being Frankton. So I think, just to give you confidence, I'm really supportive of that pathway. And I think we're all sort of saying that you'll obviously do the pricing and look at how the delivery model is going to work from there. But that's what this conversation today is about: location. I think you can move with confidence when it comes to my opinion. So.
Can I just tip in, because obviously you're right to be thinking of changes to the size, scale, structure of our organisation. But the reality is that's a real managerial BAU kind of thing. As we go forward, we'll structure leases in a certain way. We structure our space a certain way to be able to flex and change. And these things they're not like they happen immediately tomorrow. We'll have a bit of a horizon on it and we'll plan accordingly. So you're right to keep that in mind. But
It is one of the options, I suppose, and that was what my last question was: what's the difference between, if we said D, I know we're not going for it, but if we did, what would be the difference between the direction on D and A? Like, how much are you going to do before you understand what the future of local government looks like.
Well, the status quo would probably come back to you in a report anyway. So
Okay.
get an opportunity to play.
Statutorily, it has to
So-
anyway,
Yeah,
for us to
but
make a decision.
No.
yes,
What I'm saying is how much work are you going to do developing the options or developing a proposal, or whatever it looks like in the background, before we understand whether maybe the headquarters of council for, so, you know, the, what are we calling it now? Our region, you know, whether it's in Cromwell. Because there may need to be a council building in Cromwell. I'm just
There may be,
saying.
you're absolutely right.
So
but
why?
These aren't gonna happen in.
No, they're not. And that's
While
why,
this works out.
and that's why I'm asking how much work is going to get done between now and when we have a bit more clarity on that. Because what we don't want is us engaging consultants to do this, that and the other thing, when we're really not.
we've got enough information on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would like to think our long-term plan process
Yeah.
will go in. There's money for a building in there. It's already sort of part of that discussion. Just to be clear again, I want to make this point. Us borrowing 50 million or signing up to a 30-year lease for a $50 million building sits on a balance sheet. It's the same thing. So that's the affordability side of it. It in effect is the same thing in terms of a financing. Well, we can afford it. If we can afford to sign up for a 30-year lease on something, we can afford
All I'm saying is
to borrow the same.
please don't engage contractors and spend a lot of ratepayers' money between now and we have a bit more clarity around what local governments
So
do.
I think what I would say, Vicky, that there has been significant work done on this and significant
We're not going to
investigation
get
already. So this isn't a case of running out and starting a whole big new pieces of work with consultants. However, us as officers have to do sufficient work to give you the ability to make good decisions on it. So that we will be doing, so staff time will be going into that. Obviously, otherwise we're not giving you what you need to be able to make a call between any of them.
And you'll be bearing in mind that main council may be based in Cromwell down the track. And
Not
then
at this stage.
so you want, so this is my issue. Is
So making that assumption, you also making that assumption because it's correct.
what I'm saying
It would need to come into the auctioneering to say, if an important aspect of this would be around the flexibility to release and move.
it's got to be, we've been head start proposal.
But we have entered the heads up proposal, but remember that is on a horizon of, I think, 2032 at the moment, which is not going to happen tomorrow. And it does not necessarily mean that everything is centralised in one place. It could be a centralised office and then.
It doesn't, you're exactly right. And I'm not
So
saying it
you
does.
just got to be
but
flexible.
Exactly, and please maintain the flexibility and just let's not go too far down one hole.
I don't know about the rest of the people around this table, but I'm not prepared to wait until after this term of council to come up with a solution to this problem. It's on us. We need to solve this. I think though, what's happening, what Paul's leading and the rest of the team working on will be a concept for a hub. If in that time we get some clarity, even if there's only a moderate change in government after the election, and they stick with the time frame they have, we're still not going to have any clarity until 2028. So we've got to continue. However, the concept could, in that time frame, be lifted and shifted to wherever. It's the concept that's important.
And feed into some of the other bits.
Yep, all of the rest.
Strategies and town area and all that sort of stuff.
I think this
So the work
flexibility
has to
mindset,
continue.
this flexibility mindset is something we've got to take into everything, because
Yep.
we're going to find
Yeah.
point after point, you're going to have imperfect information and
there's always
uncertainty
been-
around where it's going.
They've always been waiting on something, and this is just one
Oh,
something
this
like
is
that.
different.
No, it's not. It's not different at
But
all.
we're
It's
going to
just
have to
another,
take that.
it's just another,
Yeah.
another something.
Well, there's-
Well, we had to about Lakeview.
Yeah, that-
And about,
But I,
no
I
doubt.
am sort of, I mean, the theme of today for me has been that we've been fairly indecisive as a council. And I think we need to be braver and clear. I mean, I've said it before, sometimes there's decisions that we make, I call them the colour of the kitchen decisions, and some decisions are, you know, there's better decisions, worse decisions, and then there's right and wrong decisions. This isn't a right and wrong decision. It's the different ways to deliver an outcome, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not quite the colour of your kitchen, but it's not far off it. It's just different ways to deliver, and there's pros and cons of different ones. And I think we need to be braver and actually move forward on something, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Surviving with that, I don't see that's to be
We're not surviving, it's not a sustainable situation. We've got rents increasing, we've got buildings, this building
honest.
isn't gonna last forever, it's gonna cost us more and more as the years go by. You've got the water dripping out of the ceiling in the middle of the chambers, for crying out loud.
If we build a building, we can sell a building. If we sign up to a lease, there's lease renewals and we can not renew the lease. Like, there's always a break. You can sublease, you can transpose leases. Like, people don't put a gun to your head because you've got to move to Cromwell.
Well, they might have, maybe just reflect that. I think if we could get direction today that Frankton was the preferred. Then the next job is for Paul to come back with those various options, you know, as you say, there's sales options, there's breaks, you know, that's the how, but the where is really important because it also does start to unlock some of the other things that we need to bring to you as part of the LTP, like, for example, what are some of the other options around Stanley Street and land swaps and things like that. So, yeah.
But we think it's time and time again that there's plenty of money out there that for people who want a secure but moderate return on their investment. And this is a classic example. If they can get a long-term tenant with a reliable funding stream, there'll be people who want to, you know, what's his name, Sam Stubbs, all over it. You know, there'll be people who love this stuff because it goes, you can commit to a reasonably long term and then they can build it knowing that it's going to be an icon in the middle of Frankton for the next 40 years.
No, let's not build an icon.
Well, and I will just directly.
We shouldn't build it. I maintain that we shouldn't build it.
We've heard that.
We're bad at that stuff.
We should look at the option. Which would be the first
I can direct you to one of the observations there under the delivery model, which is, if you think about where does the money flow. So if you're flowing it to back into a council asset, i.e., you know, the money that's being paid in rates for our office accommodation solutions goes back to a council asset, or does it go to a third party, you know, private developer?
Yeah.
And that's as much a political decision as anything in terms of where's the money going.
I understand that, but you'll know how much money.
Yeah.
If leasing is a third of the cost of building and the cost of capital of that build and the paying that off, it's marginal. Well, if it's the same, then I'll almost say it's built.
And that's what, but we may not be able to bring you back to that in October.
Okay.
And just to get the expectation right, on the 6th, when we come back to the 6th of October, it would be more in relation to the decision to go to Frankton around location. And then there's a bit more work that would review required in terms of actually working through that, including planning restrictions of various pathways and some of that detail you're looking at.
Yep.
So if we're looking in terms of financing, Quentin said we can't afford it. And I'm just going off of my figures. It looks like 42 million at the top.
Yeah.
But as a middle road lease option to buy.
Yeah, so lease to build.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the scope of the building would be really important there, rather than necessarily the financing of it. Right. We've got a 4% cost of capital. Market's looking probably for 7%, so there's a 3% differential. The risk that arguably the market is pricing in the risk themselves into that, and that's where we get our scope from. And so our ability to actually realise 4% versus the 7% is arguably there. What it really comes down to, where's the cash going? Who's it going to? Is it going back into a council asset, or is it going into
usually it's split.
Yeah, well, it was split under that other proposal on Stanley Street. It was a 50-50 JV.
Yeah.
We won't go there. The only thing in that for us would be, and this was another consideration on Stanley Street, is whether council do it on their land. And then that doesn't become a development cost, and therefore there's no return required from the market on that. So again, they're the big rocks. Yeah. The little rocks around, whether it's 4% or 5%, is a mining.
Yes. So let me ask you the question though: is the question of a known, lease agreement over a period of time a higher risk than it's $40 million project turning into $60 million project.
That's the risk I was talking about. So that's why the biggest rely on the developer. That's why they risk price that into there, and that's a market. And arguably, price of fuel is associated with the risk of it.
Like I said, the biggest risks that we have are the ones where we end up escalating and not having the control over it. And if we commit to a $40 million project and it becomes 60, what happens? Your business case goes out the window. And we should,
how many buildings did you deliver over 25 years or something like that?
I don't think I should say.
Okay.
They weren't office building, but it's about get rid of the word bespoke.
Yeah.
Office building's an office building. Yes, you can put some nice signs and nice facade, but
No, it's like.
basics. Totally. But there are third-party people who want to build good quality buildings as well. And the one that we have on the table, out at Frankton Flats, had, what do you call it, timber framing and had all these things that they chose to do.
It'll be brought to us. We will see it in due course.
Yeah, and I can just, if you just, we looked at that, for example, with previous council on the Manawa site, and this was pre-COVID, it was a 4,500 square metre building. And we said post-COVID we work differently, so we can now reduce down to 3,500 square metres. So it was a $10 million saving on the cost of the building. And different people around the table, some people were around the table, and we said to them, to the council at the time, okay, there's a $10 million saving we can do here on the scope of the building. Would you like to bank it or put it into green technology, i.e. the timber and all that? And everyone around the table said, spend the same amount of money and put it into green technology. So a different time now, but all I'm trying to say is it's more around the scope of the building than the financing.
Those goals should be on the table though, and lower better carbon and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We have that opportunity to make that part of the.
And it costs no more. So the Justice Precinct in Christchurch was done as a major project. It was run by the Department of Justice. They are the head, they own the building, and all of the other tenants, including police, fire, ambulance, and 3 emergency management agencies, they all paid to rent it. It came in within budget, $300 million. And it was 10 times the size of what we're talking about here. So now the developer took a big loss. But that's another story. So they were held to a contract and they had to deliver. It was delivered on time, to spec, a highly functional, fit for purpose, minimum viable, highly resilient product. It can be done.
Yeah.
We should do it here.
And if you have a building performance specification that everyone's agreeing on, and then no one meddles with it, then there's half your risk gone.
Yep.
Did you say no one meddles?
No.
So good luck.
And we will bring back the rest of the
Very much.
scenarios.
Super.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, where are we at? There. We've got. We're supposed to. Okay.